Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 4. Week 4 is a bit of a long week. We're exactly halfway through the course at this point, and we're going to shift from thinking about presence and interaction into thinking about design. And I wanted to walk you through the activities this week just to kind of give you a heads up to a few things that students in the class typically miss or struggle with during this course. So there are two elements of course design: navigational design, which is the layout of the online course. So my navigational design includes tabs at the side, headings, a particular color scheme, and then instructional design. And that means how we take our learning outcomes, align them to assignments, and assessments that work together to close learning gaps. And this definition of instructional design is going to be really important for the rest of the term, and for those of you taking the certificate program, the rest of the certificate program. It's a little bit tricky to get learning outcomes, assignments, and assessments to align, and we're going to start working on that this week. So here are our kind of goals for the week. You can read over those. The readings this week are really important because I want to see you demonstrating, especially these Hewitt techniques, in the feedback you're giving to your peers. So this is not just peer review student to student. You're also practicing the kinds of comments and review you would give on your student papers as well. So read at least 2 or more of your peers' assignments, and then I will assign you to review 2 peers in particular for this next stage. Then read homework in an online writing course and reading in the literacy load, because we're going to be talking about, at this point in the term, you might feel totally overwhelmed because the course moves fast. There's a lot of reading and writing. Your students are going to feel the same way. So in what ways can we help them lighten that load? And like I said, make sure you pay close attention to the Hewitt readings. I'm not asking you to read these entire chapters, just sections of these chapters to apply that feedback to your peers' assignments. And then watch Michelle Pakinski-Brock's How to Design Your Online Course, because she's just amazing, and that's a cool short video. So the discussion, the peer feedback on the assignment. By Friday, I'd like you to respond to at least 2 assignments, and I'd like you to do it in a particular way. So think about the information or questions that your classmates provided on their initial thread, and then read the assignment draft. Don't add comments in the first time you read the assignment. You can take notes on a separate piece of paper, but I don't want you to do a first pass where you're actually adding comments. On the second read, I want you to use the comment feature in Google Docs to leave lower order sentence level responses. So this is our schedule in Google Docs. The comments feature, if you highlight any section of text, you'll see the comments feature pop up here on the right-hand side of your screen. You can just click on that, add your comment, and then hit comment. So use these comments for kind of the lower order skills. So if you see a sentence that doesn't make sense, or you think a section could be better as a bulleted list, you can use those comment features to add that to your student or your peer's paper directly. Then in the discussion board itself, so in the 4.1 discussion board, let me click over there real quick. Oh, that's 3. It's early. I've had very little coffee. Okay. I'm just going to use Rhonda's for an example. In the actual discussion board thread, hit reply and add the global comments. And Hewitt explains the difference between lower order and higher order. So the big things, content, organization, topics, themes, audience. As you write your response, make sure that you pay attention to how Hewitt writes her response in that chapter 13, the pages 192 and 193, and try to model that form of peer response. After you have responded to your classmates, go back and make sure you're responding to the classmates that respond to you, and everything should be done by this Sunday. We're having a discussion about the literacy load, which should be pretty simple. And then I want to talk just a little bit at the end here about this activity, which is outcomes, activities, and assessments table. So every course has learning outcomes. If you're teaching for ULR, Comp 1 and Comp 2 have a set of outcomes that are designed around something called the WPA outcomes, and that's a national document that sets basic minimums for what students in composition programs need to know by the end of their courses. So I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a story here at the beginning. I started off saying things like I would grade for organization, evidence, and clarity. And after a while, I realized students might not necessarily know what these terms mean in my head. So I need to explain them, and I need to connect them to the learning outcomes. So I give an example here of what that means. So if the outcome is analyze how a writer used appeals to intrinsic and extrinsic ethos to persuade a specific audience, which is very outcome languagey, then our instructional language, so our student-facing language, should say something like this. In this unit, we will study arguments to understand how writers use appeals to intrinsic and extrinsic ethos as they try to win over their audience. And I've bolded these sections here because those are particular sections that I am taking right from this learning outcome. So I'm connecting at the level of language, the learning outcome, to the instructional language in the activity. And then in my assessment, I'm going to do the same thing. So in order to write to a specific audience, they have to identify it. In order to use intrinsic and extrinsic ethos, they have to be able to identify those. And the writer describes how those appeals to ethos will be persuasive for that particular audience. So when I assess, I'm assessing for these three components that are directly tied to both of these. So I'm setting a goal in the outcome. I'm asking students specifically to complete the goal. And this is just kind of a one sentence. This would be a whole unit that I would type out. And then I am evaluating them on that goal using the evidence or the language that I use in the outcome and the activity. So they should understand all the way through audience, intrinsic and extrinsic, and how those appeals to ethos relate. So I use that same kind of language. So you'll create a little table here for this week. That's a way of practicing this kind of language and work. So I gave you an example at the top. This is what I would write in the table, and then everything down here is description of what that is. So just go ahead and do the same thing for some learning outcomes in your course. And if you don't have learning outcomes, practice writing some. What should students know by the end of the class that you're designing? Or you could take outcomes from your course assignment and say, these are the outcomes that we're going to focus on in this particular section. It's a lot of work, but I know you can get through it. Lastly, I'd like you to update your learning grid. So go back into your learning grid and using a different color font or different color something, go in and add in what you've learned so far. So this is kind of a midterm assessment for you to know where you're at in the process and know what you still need to review. So take that original one and add in information that you've learned, or what Dirksen says, kind of putting clothes in your closet. So adding things in once you've built your structure, so you remember, especially for those of you taking the certificate, at the end of the program you'll do a reflection. This grid will help you remember what you learned at what point in the program. So that's all. Sorry if I just made you dizzy by scrolling up. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be in the course all week this week, working in the discussion boards and giving feedback on the assignments. So have a great week. Don't get overwhelmed. Breathe. And we got this. We're halfway through. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.